Hey, it's Juck. At number one, the most beautiful uniform in all of sport. If they brought back the gray stripes, this thing is so far out in front of everybody, you can't touch it. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Hey, welcome, and it's your friend Juck. Joining us today on today's Juck on Bucks, co-host of Andy and Ari on 3, covering national college football and lead college football contributor on On3.com. Ari Wasserman. Ari, thanks so much for joining me, buddy.
Hey, appreciate you having me, man. Really appreciate you, supporting the show way back in the day, and being a loyal fan and somebody who's been around the block a few times. So honored to be on and happy to be here.
Absolutely. For those who don't know, I imagine most of my audience does, but Ari started his career at Cleveland.com, covering Ohio State, still follows the Buckeyes as closer than any team. And I think his perspective is really unique now when we talk about the Buckeyes, coming from the national perspective, as well as he knows all the other programs and knowing the Buckeyes intimately. Ari, coming into the season, a lot more questions than usual for these Buckeyes, replacing 14 draft picks, both coordinators, offensive line coach, and looking at the roster, you had a lot of guys that had some great experience, but still going to be first-time starters, a new quarterback. And it looked to me like 2026 was kind of the target year as far as the roster went for a potential another national championship run. This year kind of felt like house money to me, whatever happened. And a lot of Buckeye fans felt like this actually might be kind of a step back year. What was your impression of this team coming into the year?
My impression of the team was that it would still be a top 5 team in the country. And you know this, you've been following Ohio State, I assume, your entire life. The thing that's so interesting to me about Ohio State in my decade plus covering the team and living in Columbus is that the teams that broke through and the teams that won national championships a lot of times were like it wasn't the year. Like so many times in media and, even in fanhood, you look and we have X number of players coming back. Our schedule sets up perfectly. Everything is great. We're going to win it this year. And it's like, those aren't the years they win it. Like in 14, that was a year early. And in 15, They were supposed to win it and they didn't. In 05, they were a year early. In 06, they were supposed to win it and didn't. There's all these different, years where the best teams have accomplished the most or have accomplished a lot, but didn't win it all. And then the teams that do win it all weren't. Like in 19 was supposed to win it all. They didn't. And then last year they were a really good team. I don't know that I would have gone into last year thinking that they were going to win it all. And then certainly with the way that the regular season ended and, all that, I didn't realize that, a remarkable run was around the corner, and it was. So for me, I think Ohio State moving forward is a national championship contender every year, no matter what. And the most interesting thing to me more than anything is Ohio State's place in the sport as it evolves. They lost so many good players last year and they still have more better players or more good players than everybody else. And it's like, how long can you sustain that? Right. And I personally think that Ryan Day is probably a win over Michigan and another deep run in the playoff away from being the best coach in college football, because Ohio State is sustaining talent at a level that their peers can't, even top tier peers.
That was actually one of the topics I wanted to get to, not just Day, but I actually think that Ohio State is very close to kind of taking over the mantle from Georgia as the IT program. I don't think it's too far off. I didn't think we might not see another one of those IT programs after Georgia because of the way the sport's structured now. But I think if they can win another one this year with the way things are running, and honestly looking at the roster next year, which will be more experienced and better, but not just that, Ari, his coaching staff, when we look at, let's just start there with Matt Patricia. That was a hire that nobody saw coming. The fan base was torn apart over, it was 50-50. It was bad. Even media outlets who don't criticize Ryan Day were not happy about that. His time in Detroit, to think at that period that could have potentially been an upgrade from Jim Knowles was absurd. This guy's been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stunned watching this defense every week.
Yeah, I thought it was really revelatory last week when PJ Fleck seemed dumbfounded in his news conference. I was like, that guy's like, what do you like? I mean, he basically was just like, what do you want me to do? Like, and it's like, and it's true. And like, I feel for him, but like Ohio State has really good players. And I think that a lot of times that we get wrapped up in assistants, and we should, because if you have a bad assistant, it will be exposed. Over the course of the Urban Meyer era, there were assistants that weren't very good, and their position group led to losses. And I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, or the few that I am talking about. But when you bring in a person who has competed at the highest level, and then you give him options in terms of the players that they have on their defense, it seems harder to mess that up than it is to be ultra successful. And I know that this defense was not supposed to be better than last year's. Obviously, they lost a lot of, benchmark players from their defensive line, especially. The NFL draft told a pretty impressive story of what Ohio State had on their roster last year. And I always get worried. During my time on the Ohio State beat, the question was, is this going to get better after you lose a good player? Like, I'm Doug and Bill will probably tell you all about that. During the Day in the Bad podcast, people used to write in questions like, we just lost X player who got taken in the top 5. Are we going to be better next year? Like, that's always the expectation for Ohio State. But like right now, their production is better than it was last year. And obviously having Caleb Downs back there is a huge get. And you lean on players that are transcendent the way that he is, but like Arvell Reese is now the best linebacker in college football. Like, I mean, anybody watching Ohio State play, like it's, and you have these pieces and they're too deep. And this is what makes Ohio State so unique. It's like we can fixate on Matt Patricia, and he's done a great job. I'm not trying to diminish that he's done a good job. But they have struck a balance in high school football recruiting, retention, and then also bringing in important pieces through the portal. Like, that's how they're sustaining it. Like, as long as they continue to sign guys like Arvell Reese out of high school and keep them on the team long enough to develop to have their moment, like they're going to be good year over year. Now, will they be elite year over year? You mentioned the Georgia thing at the beginning of the question, and it's like Georgia won 2 national titles in a 3-year period, and then they became the king of the sport. Like if Ohio State goes back to back in this era, like that's the same thing, if not better. So yes, I think that they would replace them. Now the question is there going to be another team? Maybe that'll be Ohio State. Maybe it won't. That wins 3 out of the next 10 or 4 out of the next 10, the way that Bama did. And I'll caution people that the sport is different. It's harder to retain your roster year over year than ever before. But there are more good teams now that can beat you. Like Indiana didn't exist in 2009. It didn't exist in 2018. You've got 6 teams in the Big Ten that can beat you on the right day, probably. And the SEC is a conglomerate of 10 teams that can win the conference at any given moment. So repeating is going to be difficult. But if they can stand ahead and above from a roster standpoint, retention and continually signing elite level high school classes, they're going to be really, really good year over year. And Ryan Day, is a really good coach. So they're in a pretty good position, probably the best position of anybody in college football at the moment.
I agree. And I am really impressed by culturally what he's built. It doesn't, when you look at, the spring portal, which is gone now, but they lost nobody. Them and Bama, I think, were the only, top teams that lost absolutely nobody, walked off that team. They seem to have struck the perfect balance. They're bringing in, and I did think it was interesting if we look at the portal last year, Oregon, Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia all brought in the identical number of transfer players, which kind of shows you, okay, if you got the epitome of a perfect roster, you're going to bring in 10 or 11 transfer portal guys. Like that's the standard.
Well, that's
right
the
now.
thing that stands out to me here, Juck. If you look at their starting 22, there are only 3, I think, players that transferred in the offseason.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the average is. Like, there's got to be some like data person. I'm stupid and I don't know anything about math, but there's got to be some data person that's like, of all the like in 10 years, we're going to look back and like the teams that won the national championship at the beginning of the portal's creation and the 10 years after had X number of average 1-year rentals or 1-year players or 2-year players that they brought in specifically to start. And I know that Ohio State had some places on the line to shore up the running back position. Like, I don't even know, is CJ Donaldson still considered a starter? I mean, I don't know the running back.
3 carries last week, bro. He's
yeah. So then is it two players are starting for them in the transfer portal? Like, that means that they've done a really good job of developing and maintaining their high school recruiting, which is a lost art now. Ohio State has always been an elite program. The 10 years I was there, they dominated the Big Ten because they dominated recruiting. And I think that because the transfer portal is so fun and it's easy to get wrapped up in like, who did you get this last cycle or who's coming in right away? Like, trust me, I understand the Caleb Downs transfer thing is a really important thing. Quinshon Judkins, Will Howard, they won championship with portal guys, and I'm not diminishing the importance of that. But what I am saying is the teams that continue to recruit top 10 classes and bring those players in are going to be a step above. And that's part of the reason why Miami is so good this year. Miami is a team that has done pretty well in the portal, but they have recruited the trenches like crazy, and they're very good from high school grown signed players. And Ohio State is as good as anybody in the country at maintaining that. And Georgia and Alabama are too, and they will be that good. But like Ohio State has done a really good job of retaining their players. I mean, obviously last year was unique. I don't know if they wouldn't have lost to Michigan the year before, if all those guys would have come back.
True.
But they all came back.
Yeah.
And they won a national title. But now you have a bunch of players stepping into first-year roles that could have left for more money in a starting job sooner that are still on the team. And they've done a remarkable job in the high school recruiting and the retention piece of Ohio State is the thing that makes them special. And the thing that I resent the most about the discourse from last year and even into this year is that Ohio State goes out and buys their roster when, like, yeah, I mean, they probably do because everybody does, but the reason why they're good isn't because of the portal. The reason why they're good is because they kept people from going in it.
That's obviously true, and you know it, and I know it. But yes, the discourse was very, very different, and it was very frustrating. But as someone who
and it shouldn't be though. That's the thing. Even if Ohio State went out and bought everybody, that means they're better at NIL than you. That's part of the game. Like if you could go out and spend $10 million on all 22 starting players and beat the shit out of everybody, it doesn't matter. Like you're playing within the confines of the rules. Anyway, I don't know why people get so defensive about it, but it's factually not true because that's not how
it. Inaccuracies. I just don't like inaccurate narratives. That's all. And that's like you, I am very sensitive to the public narrative, and I pay attention to what fan and media feelings are kind of around college football. And there's something I got to hit on here. When we talk about these top 1, 2, 3 rated quarterbacks coming into college football, the Dylan Raiolas, Lagways, Keelan Russells, Tavian St. Clair, Arch Manning, Bryce Underwood, these type dudes, when these guys come into big time programs, the year that they're about to take over as the starting quarterback, the media is abuzz. The fans around college football have a take, particularly the home fan base. Julian Sayin was the number 1 247 composite quarterback over Lagway and Dylan Raiola. The Rivals industry ranked number 2, right between those two.
Yeah.
And I am of the opinion that I have never in my life seen a guy of that stature get less run than we saw this offseason.
Yeah. And like,
I don't know why.
I do a national show. And I don't talk about Ohio State every day. Right. So like that used to be my life. Ohio State 100% of the time for a decade, in my prime, my 20s, the short north tore it up. But I can explain it if you want me to explain it to you.
Give it to me.
First of all, the two people that you are comparing Julian Sayin to are kind of unique. Yeah. Obviously, Arch Manning is a unique person. And like, obviously his name carries a lot of weight, but he is going to suck up a lot of oxygen. And he is on a team that is in a transition period that's been knocking on the door that people thought was going to win the national title this year. Like Texas was my off-season pick to win the title. And I also am not going to shy away from the fact that I thought Arch Manning would be awesome.
I don't think the reasoning was bad. I was right with you.
Yeah. Arch Manning's season is not going the way that I anticipated that it would. And that's sports, man. Like, you know, the thing that's changed about my job, Juck, that didn't used to be the case now that we have podcasts and we're all like video first and all this stuff. And like back in the day when I was at Cleveland, we were reporters. We reported on what happened. Now, so much of what we're supposed to do is project the future. And dude, if I could project the future, I'd be like on a yacht with like my wife and throwing lobsters at people like in Saint-Tropez. Like I projecting the future is hard. Yeah. And you know, but for everything that I saw from Arch, the coach pushed out a player that's in the NFL right now for him, or what that person was not welcome back. The players around him are good. Talent evaluators see a 6'4" guy with a rocket arm who's super athletic. Like all the pieces added up to him being productive. What's actually happening right now is bizarre.
Yes.
But he's Arch Manning, and that's obviously going to take up a lot of oxygen in the offseason because he's Arch Manning. And then 2, GJ Lagway is a physical freak. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how much people know about him. And I know that a lot of people resented the thought process that he was going to be very good, but he is going to be a first-round pick one day. Like, I still stand by that. Like, if you go look at his measurables, and he was at a place that is transitioning as well and could be firing their coach. So from a national standpoint, you have interesting storylines that Julian Sayin just really don't stack up with. Lastly, if we're going to play this bullshit of we don't know who's going to start,
I'm with you.
for 5 months, and like we're going to go into fall camp of not knowing who the starter is.
Yeah.
It's hard to gas up a player in July is going to be awesome when the own head coach won't acknowledge that he's the starter. So I'm not saying that Ohio State did anything wrong. I'm not saying that Ohio State didn't know who the starter was. Maybe Lincoln Kienholz was closer to him. But my calculus was, one, if the coach is playing this game and is just trying to motivate Julian Sayin, that's one thing. But if Lincoln Kienholz actually is neck and neck with him, then I'm not going to compare him to DJ Lagway, who they retained their head coach because he existed. Like when you think about it, it's not like, and I feel like this has always been the case, even when I was covering Ohio State. Like, Ohio State is one of the best, most storied, most amazing programs in college football. But there's this Ohio State fan, like, victim thing where it's like, oh, the entire world's out to get us. And it's like, that's not real. Like, Ohio State is one of the most successful, amazing programs in the world. Everybody acknowledges it. They know it. They know they're good. They know they're elite. Julian Sayin didn't get run because he wasn't named the starter until like 3 weeks before the season started. And that caused people like me to doubt that he was as good as he is. If you would have just been like, we have a 5-star player who won the Elite 11, who I saw in person, he is the up-and-coming guy, he's our guy. From the get-go, the conversations would have been much different, I think. That's my theory on it.
Okay. It has some
fair?
logic behind it. Yeah, absolutely. That said, this dude's ridiculous, bro. Are you kidding me?
He is very good. And listen, this is the thing about sports, too.
Yeah.
In the offseason, we have all these philosophical, predictive discussions about what could happen.
It's long and boring. Yeah.
If you're really good, your time will come.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they win the national title and he keeps throwing it all over the place and doing all, I think that like they're starting to unleash him a little bit more, which is good. I thought their game plan at Washington was a little vanilla, but I also understand too that you don't have to score a ton to win. His time will come. Like, if you're an Ohio State fan who is like, oh, Julian Sayin is not getting enough attention, he's awesome, why are we talking about DJ Lagway and not him? It's like, who do you think we're going to be talking about when the playoffs come around? Like, who do you think we're going to be talking about in November when they play Michigan? He might even be a Heisman finalist for all we know. The cream always rises to the top. Now, Arch Manning is different because he's such a lightning rod of a figure. When he plays poorly, we talk a lot about him because of what it means for Texas's program and what it means for the future of NIL. Like, think about this. There's philosophical conversations that need to happen right now about how much money do you pay a player who hasn't proven himself? How many moves do you make internally with your program as a head coach around players who haven't produced yet? Like that, those are all like real college football discussions. But in terms of like people getting their credit, 90% of America didn't know who Arvell Reese was in July. I think everybody knows who he is now. Like, as you produce and as you win, there's a 0% chance that Julian Sayin will not get his say and his due on the national discourse. And we've done a good job, I think, of talking about him on our show. And here's the other thing. Ohio State is so good and so dominant, they're freaking boring.
It is boring.
It's boring. Like, Ohio State fans, and that's part of the reason why I was so anti-expansion of playoff, because I remembered covering Ohio State, and like, you got that, that feeling. You go to the games?
Yeah.
Do you go?
Yeah.
That feeling before a big game when you're outside the shoe, it's freezing outside. You see that ambulance that's, decked out in Ohio State stuff, and like that rumble in the ground of like, today is a day. Like, you can feel it, that emotion. Like, Ohio State fans have been stripped of that, because even if they lose big games, it doesn't matter to them. Like, being an Ohio State fan, the actual fan experience kind of sucks, because you go and you play Minnesota and you win 42-3. No one cares because it's boring. and you get one good or two good home games a year at most.
It's been the
everything
bane
else
of my
is just-
existence. Yeah.
It's just so like, what do you get excited for? The only time that Ohio State fans can get rightfully excited is the Michigan game, which hasn't gone their way the last 4 or 5 years, and the playoff, because the regular season's pointless now. And when they blow out Minnesota, no one gives a shit. Even their fans don't give a shit. They want to see them play when's their next good game? I know they're playing Illinois, which is a quasi good game this weekend, but
it's Penn State and Michigan again. Same repeat, rinse, repeat, and Penn State isn't even a game, really.
Not even that great this year. So, like, you're telling me that Ohio State played Texas in their opener, which, by the way, was awesome. Okay, like, let's be honest, that was fun, and they got it at home. The game was at noon. They got it at home, and then they had to wait 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks before they play Penn State. That's half of this. That's more than half of the season.
Yes, but
before they play an interesting game.
Silver lining. I've got to tell you. Listen, next year, Nebraska is the number 6 ranked game in the Juck on Bucks rankings when we look at the Buckeyes schedule. We've got Texas, Indiana, Oregon, USC, Michigan, Nebraska, Illinois. Did I say Indiana already? Like, it's awesome.
Yeah, so, that's good.
But yes, that's the schedule I've always wanted.
But if they lose to Oregon and Penn State next year, they could still make the playoff and win the national title. Like this,
I'm with you. I didn't want expansion either. I understand that.
This is the one thing that I do not understand. So I know firsthand from living it how important the Michigan game is. And we're 20 minutes into this, and I'm sure we're going to have to talk about this eventually.
Yeah.
Do Ohio State fans, I mean, now they do because they won the national title. But do you want a system where you can lose to Michigan and win the national title? Because, yes, they have it all now. They won it. They won the national title. But, like, doesn't that diminish the Michigan game? Like,
it absolutely does.
Why are we diminishing the Michigan game? It's the best day of the year for Ohio State fans. And, like, even now that's a little bit like now we have – and, like, look, I know that some of it is defense mechanism, right? When you're talking to a Michigan fan, who cares if we won that game? We won the national title. What are you going to say to somebody? But, like, whenever I see somebody say, who cares that we lost to Michigan, we won the national title, I legitimately cringe.
Me too. I can't stand it.
I
went on a tirade about it for a while. I think it's too important to both states, both universities, as someone who grew up in it, to let it die because of, we don't care anymore. I think you can look at the national championship and the annual championship of the rivalry game as two totally different things. And the folks who were saying,
how do you feel about last year's title?
It doesn't feel as good to me. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
It doesn't, but I hate letting them hear me say that. You know what I mean?
But they should hear that. That's the thing. They should, because when you win, like, listen, everybody feels like the last game is the last game that's going to be played. And it's like, okay, Michigan's got the best of Ohio State the last few years. Part of the beauty of the rivalry is reveling in the misery of that. Like, that's why it's such an awesome rivalry. You don't want them to hear it. I mean, they know it. You want them to feel like they accomplished the world because you want to feel like you accomplished the world when you do it. That's the point. So, like,
it's been too many years in a row, Ari.
No, I know it, but they did it. I mean, Ohio State won what, 18 out of 20? Like, okay, so like,
they forgot all that.
But I know, but for the rivalry to heal properly, it has to swing back eventually a little bit. You know, and it's just like I'm like pro preservation of rivalry.
Hell yes.
Like, if you are an Ohio State fan and you've ever started a sentence with "Who cares if we lost to Michigan?" That's like, what do you like? Whatever comes after that, like, is nonsense to me. And like, I'm not saying don't celebrate the title, but I do think that last year's national championship, while should be celebrated and should be lauded, and I'm sure there'll be books written about it, it's not as pure as it should have been.
All right, the shirts they sell with the scores on the back, I won't buy one.
Yeah.
Like the tourist shirt, no way. I'm not wearing that shirt.
You're telling me that an Ohio State fan, when they're 80 years old, if they lived through all these successes, is going to hold last year's national title to the same regard as 14 and 02? Like, no way. No way. So, and I'm not trying to diminish last year. was wonderful. It's maybe one of the single greatest postseason runs in the history of the
It was a
sport.
ridiculous run.
Like it's great. And Ryan Day legitimized himself as a coach in doing it. I'm not saying that it's not important, but what I am saying is that Ohio State fans have such a tightrope to walk in terms of what they get pure enjoyment out of. They don't enjoy wins the same way that other fan bases do because they're so accustomed to it. Don't take away the rivalry. That's one of the tentpole dates on the calendar. And you know damn well they have to win this year. Like they have to win this game this year. If Ryan Day is ever going to be the number one coach, if Ohio State is ever going to be the undisputed, as they like to write on Lane Avenue, champion of the sport or the premier of the sport, you can't keep losing to Michigan, especially when Michigan's not very good. Like Michigan was bad last year for their standard. And that was one of the single most confusing results I've seen in my entire career.
It was the worst game of my life. Just the confusing, everything about it. And it was very clear looking at that head coach in that moment that was someone who had, like, that was the first time I was willing to admit, okay, there is something here, like mentally with him in this game. It's just different. He's different.
And I wonder if winning the national title and going on the run that they've gone will heal that.
Yes, now that he's accomplished something and given something to everybody
that he didn't have now.
Right.
Which, going on and Ohio State's much better than Michigan this year, so they should win the game. They were much better than them last year. Like, listen, being a national person now, like I had a decision to make about what game to go to that day. And we went to A&M Texas. Like I was like, I'm not even going to go to Columbus. What's the point? It's the 17.5 point spread. And it's like, now it's like, that was so bizarre. I was in a Texas Roadhouse and I was like, what the hell am I watching here? It didn't even occur to me that they were going to lose the game until the last 3 minutes. Anyway, I'm not trying to drag you down into the pits of hell, but Ohio State is on the verge here to wrap back up to the question you asked about Georgia. Like if Ohio State can beat Michigan this year and make a deep run, I think that Ohio State will be the number one program in college football, period. And I think they can. I think they will. I don't know who's going to beat them.
I'm with you. A couple overall questions before I get you out of here regarding the state of college football. Tony Petitti coming out and pushing already for a 28-32 team playoff. Ohio State Athletic Director Ross Bjork has kind of become his right-hand man, de facto guy here, and he's out here pumping it too. And the argument that he's making is basically nobody can argue against more football and more meaningful football is better, totally disregarding what people like you and I have been arguing for this entire time, which is you tear the regular season down every time you do this. And
that's why I take exception to the concept of more. Everybody says exactly more. There is not more. It's reallocated.
No, it's stealing.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that we always knew they would try to expand more, but the hubris to try to just double this thing. And if the SEC wasn't standing in their way right now, they would do it. It would be 2 years away that we would be in a 32 team playoff.
If that happens, Ohio State will never play a meaningful regular season ever again.
Not a single one, bro. You can lose 4 games every year.
They'll never play a meaningful regular season game ever again.
I don't know that. I feel like there's a lot of people that don't care. They just care about the playoffs now.
And maybe that's maybe there is a segment like that's the thing that I don't know, because I am 38. I don't know how old you are. You look like a handsome young man.
46. By the way, this is the handsomest Juck on Bucks episode ever. I just want to say.
Yeah, no, I know, and I'm actually kind of feeling under the weather right now. I'm kind of pale, so get me a little warmer on the shot.
I'll cut you up.
But there is a faction of fans who are like our dads would be, which is beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, whatever happens after that's that, right? That's the Jim Tressel goal chart. And now there's a segment of more younger fans who grew up in an era where losing or beating Michigan was an annual thing, and it was all about the playoff. And I think that started happening like around the Urban Meyer era. Like when it went from Jim Tressel to Meyer, the focus went from winning the Big Ten and competing for more to national domination. Is that a fair? I think that's what Urban Meyer did for the program. And now we're 10 years into the playoff era, 10 plus years into the playoff era. And I'm wondering if the success in the playoff is the only thing that matters to people. And maybe it does. And I know that everybody's always going to want to beat Michigan and that's always going to be an important game to people. But I don't know if there's anything more important than doing well in January. And if you do that system, and I hope it never happens, but if it does, then all you're doing is creating a college basketball-like environment to me. Because like the NFL is all about the postseason, sure. But the games in the NFL at least determine who plays in the playoff. If you have 28 teams, you're going to start having 8-4, 7-5 type teams like in the mix. Like the elite level programs were losing
They're
2
all
games
in.
in the season is
We
a
can pencil
disaster.
them in at the beginning. Like we can pencil in 16 every year. They'll never not make it.
Because like
That's
even
not
like
what the
Texas,
NFL
for
is like.
instance, like at least with 12, like if Ohio State ever lost 3 regular season games, that would be an abject disaster, right?
I don't want them in if they lose 3 games. Like that's not a team that can win the championship. You know what I mean? Like I'm not.
Did you want them
happy
in
about
last year?
I did want them in last year. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that you would change your mind if they were actually
most likely, Ari.
Yeah. I didn't think that Ohio State or any team that played the way that Ohio State did at the end of the last stretch would have made the 14 field. And I thought that was just, but it was cool that they got in because they ended up winning it. But like, that's the thing. Like people change what their preference to based on like what's advantageous for them in the moment. And I think that people would, and Ohio State fans would be like, they're 9-3, but at least they have a chance to be in the playoff. I think that the playoff is fun. I love that it exists. I think that the fact that it exists has changed the scope through which we see the sport. And that has had probably a starker impact on Ohio State than any other program in the sport, because Ohio State's level of success, the way that we used to look at success at Ohio State, was perfection or near perfection. And now we've altered that viewpoint, and Ohio State just has to be very good in order to have a chance. And that, I think, is bad. I think it impacts the rivalry. I think it impacts the standard. I think it like losing to Penn State in a few weeks, if they were to lose to them, wouldn't matter. Like, I think that sucks.
I think it sucks too, Ari. You know what else sucks? It's altered the way we've seen, and we talk about the joy that an Ohio State fan gets during the regular season. It's altered the way that we are now seeing the team be coached, which is we're going to rein them in, and we're going to play this vanilla bland, and we're going to play the least plays we can, and we're going to save it all for the postseason. Like, that's been miserable to watch for me. Like the fact that Ohio State is the 135th slowest team out of 136, that's miserable as for the fan experience. I can't stand it.
Yeah, but you also want them to do it because you want them to be fresh and ready in the postseason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it changed everything.
Different. Here's the biggest difference. If you go back to the 2002 season and you think about the moments of the 2002 season, what are the things that come to mind? Holy Buckeye.
Game heroics.
Chris Gamble's pick 6 against Penn State. All these like crazy crucial moments in October and November that led to it. And then they got to play Miami, and of course, no doubt, beating Miami in the national championship, and all the things that occurred on the field in Tempe are going to be held. But when you think about the Ohio State 2002 team, you think about the entire season. What do you remember about last year's team?
Trip out to Autzen, losing the game and the run.
Okay. All I remember about, if you're an Ohio State fan, in terms of like remembering the glory of last year, would be the games in the postseason.
Right.
Like everything that happened in the regular, when you're telling your grandchildren one day or whatever about the 2024 Ohio State team, you might mention that they lost some games in the regular season, and it, cultivated a Ohio against the world mentality, and they banded together and were strong. But what you're going to talk about is, holy shit, did you see what they did against Oregon in the Rose Bowl? Did you see what they did to Tennessee when they took their shirts off? Did you see, that scoop and score by Jack Sawyer in the post? There's no regular season moments that will stand out. And if you watch an Ohio State highlight reel of its history, 90% of the clips that you would see in that video leading into 2024 would be regular season clips, and those are gone. Like, it's over. Right. And like, I don't think people appreciate that. I really don't. And maybe it doesn't matter because we evolve as the sport evolves. As consumers of the sport, we have to evolve with it. But man, like if Ohio State has an iconic play and beats Penn State on the last play of the game, my God, I hope people remember that, because it might not matter in the grand scheme of things if they have a really cool playoff run. It's been replaced.
Well said.
And the regular season is what made college football so great. Those November days when it's cold as shit in Columbus and there's no sun, and you're out there in your hoodie and jacket and you're eating buffalo wings and walking into the stadium and you're like, this is a playoff game on November 3rd. That was the epitome of college football to me.
Me too.
And now it's gone. Yeah.
It was the knockout nature of the regular season.
Yeah, that Michigan State game in 2014 on the road.
Yeah.
That was the epitome of college football. Yeah. And now in that system, that team could have lost that game and it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. That said,
and it's an entertainment product, Juck. The whole point of playing the games is to entertain us. That's why we watch them. For
sure. However, when we look at the sport now, and you said this the other day, I don't know how it would be possible with how many more good teams there are to really limit this thing to 4 or to have what we wanted, what we try to preserve, the way things change. And it just coincided at the perfect time where all of a sudden we got an explosion where we're coming into this season with 9 teams that look like they can win. A couple of them dropped off. We've added a few more. You just saw one, Miami in Tallahassee. How good are they?
Yeah. So that's the one thing that is different. So like when I was anti-expansion to 12, that opinion was predicated on the notion that only 7 teams were good enough to win the national title.
I'm with you.
Between 2000 and 2020, only 3 teams won a national championship without having signed a top 5 recruiting class in the previous 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 teams were the 2 Clemson teams and Auburn with Cam Newton. And all 3 of those teams signed multiple top 10 classes. So, and they had something in common. I think you can figure out what those 3 things were in common with those. They all had transcendent quarterback talents that ended up winning at a high level in college and then ultimately starting in the NFL. But the point is that if you recruited at X level, top 10, top 5 level, usually top 5, you could win it. And if you didn't, you couldn't. And now you have teams that are really, really good who don't recruit at that level who could conceivably do it. Michigan was the first to break through. They did not recruit at the same level as the Ohio State, Georgia, and Bama, and they won the national title 2 years ago. Washington was also in the game, and they did not recruit at that level.
Right.
And now you have 20 teams that could conceivably do it. And that makes the calculation of whether it should be 4 different. Because the worst thing that happened during the 4-team era was the fact that an undefeated Power 5 champion was left out.
Yes.
So, like, if the give and take of there are more teams, like the best teams in the country aren't nearly as loaded as they used to be.
Right.
And the good teams that come together and have a few key portal acquisitions are good enough to win those games. Like last year's Notre Dame team doesn't sniff the college football playoff final in 2018.
For sure.
When you look at the rosters, like go look at 2020 Bama's roster.
Crazy.
That roster existed last year with Ohio State to a certain extent. And maybe it kind of exists with Ohio State this year, but is it going to exist in 2030? I don't know. Like, I think the super team thing is dying because it's harder to retain. It's harder to recruit at a high level. And there's a more diverse place that more diverse pool of schools that 5-star prospects can end up at now as a result of NIL. So if you have 12 teams, which is where it's at, and 12 would have been better if there were still 5 conferences too. Like that's the other thing
right.
to keep track of. Like we killed the Pac-12 and the system was designed around the Pac-12 also existing. But 12, I think, is a good number now because a team like Texas, who's having a terrible year, like Texas has to win the rest of their games to make the playoff, even in this system, which I think is good.
Yeah.
If you expand it further than this and you make Texas an 8-4 team that was bad against its standards still get in, then there's no point of even playing the games.
That's terrible. That's terrible. I want to ask you something about what something you just mentioned there about 5-star prospects going other places. We're looking at Texas Tech next year. They've got the #1 edge rusher, LaDainian Guyton, who I mean, I'm a recruiting head like you. This dude is probably the best edge rusher I've seen in like 4 cycles. They got the number 1 defensive tackle. They're about to bag the number 1 quarterback. Is Texas Tech good for college football? What's going on right now with them? Or is it a representation of everything that is terrible about college football? What is your take on them?
I think it's fun for college football when teams that aren't typically elite level become elite. Okay.
What if they played in the Big Ten or the SEC? What if it was Mississippi State or Northwestern? Would it be different?
What do you mean by that? Sorry, I don't know what you mean.
Okay, so it's a Big 12 team, and I think that there's a lot of people, like when I talk to Ohio State fans about what's going on in Texas Tech, they could not possibly care less. But if it were a program that now you got to deal with in the Big Ten that was spending like they're spending and building like they're building so quickly, a behemoth, now all of a sudden things might be different, was my thought.
I think that everybody in the Big Ten and the SEC should treat football with the respect that it deserves and care about it. So yeah. I think that would be good. Like, do you think that it sucks for the sport that Indiana's good right now?
I hate their fans. They're real cocky, but I love it. I've lamented this as a fan of a program in the Big Ten for years, that we have so many programs that just don't give a damn about football. It sucks. And now we got some more. We got Illinois. Yeah. We got Indiana.
If you're an Ohio State fan who wants to flip the bird to the SEC, then you need teams like Indiana to be good. Like, and I think it's a net positive that Indiana and Oregon are playing on Saturday, and I'm excited to watch it.
Hell yeah.
Like, I think that that's a good thing. I think it's also a net positive that the more good teams that exist, the more enhanced the Ohio State fan experience becomes. Because if Indiana comes to town last year, that would have just been a normal, boring noon game in 2010 that no one cares about, and Ohio State would have won 51-10. You know how many of those games I covered in my career? Like, when you think about how I went to every Ohio State game for a decade, and 75% of them were boring.
Right.
It was a 35-point spread. Like, you know what it was like to travel to Piscataway in November? And like, listen, there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not thankful to get to do what I do. Okay. But I do wish that when I was on the Ohio State beat, there was more intrigue because like my favorite thing to do in the world is cover big games. You get to go to the big game that everyone's talking about. I think that the more that we can promote teams like Mississippi State and Indiana and Illinois and all these teams to be good, the better. And I think that within the confines of the rules, if we're going to allow and permit people to pay players, which I think their right is to be paid, that I am all for people weaponizing their money to try to make their teams be good. I'm all for Texas Tech trying something. They have an oil baron billionaire who wants to make their team good. Go give it a shot. I don't know what like I don't know what's good about having. Did you like it when it was the same 6 teams over and over again winning the national title? Maybe because one of your team is one of them.
I like excitement. I like fun. I think this has been.
I mean, just think about the macro. And I think the thing that has kind of harmed me as I've made a transition from Ohio State beat to national beat is that I look at things through an Ohio State prism a lot because I've been born through that like in my career. And like Ohio State's a big place with a lot of fans, and it's one of the coolest places in sports. But there are a lot of college football fans that don't root for teams like Ohio State. The majority of college football fans don't root for Alabama and Georgia. They have huge fan bases, but there are a lot of passionate college football fans who root for Auburn and root for Mississippi State and root for Indiana and all these different teams. And I think it's cool that there's more parity in the sport. But I think that there's a line that you get to where it becomes too much. And I think we're flirting with that. But my hope is that eventually we'll get some sort of sane governing body to overlook the sport and like create rules and guidelines that everybody has to adhere to. So everyone's playing the same game. But no one in the sport's ever played the same game. Ohio State's been playing a different game than Purdue for the last 100 years. So if Purdue decided one day, I don't know who's Purdue's richest alum. I don't know who it is. But if Purdue's richest alum decided, hey, you know what? I'm tired of Purdue getting its dick kicked in every weekend. I'm going to go do something about this. I'm for that. And I think that that's kind of a bizarre take, but I'm a bizarre person.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I got one more question and I'll get you out of here, Ari.
Okay.
scheduling, we have this long off season, and it's miserable, and we talk about things, and we get to the beginning of the year, and it seems to me like if we don't see something like the Big Ten SEC Challenge, which who knows if we're going to see something like that, that we are losing. The coaches are not trying to schedule as rough out of conference as we used to see them. And when I look at programs like Nebraska, like Indiana, like USC, who are kind of trying to go for the, I don't want to say easy because their schedule's not easy, but kick off those hard out of conference games. When you're a program who is trying to level up from where they're at to their stature in the college football world, I think it is the absolute wrong philosophy. I think that Nebraska should have taken on that challenge to go beat Tennessee. I think that Indiana kicking Virginia off their schedule is terrible for them. I think if they go 10-2 this year, they might have an issue based on their out of conference schedule this year. I think that USC, what Lincoln's trying to do, getting rid of the Notre Dame game, is just despicable. That's a totally different story. But I just find this philosophically wrong. And obviously for the fan, it sucks losing out on, one more game on the slate that might be fun. But it just seems like the wrong idea. What's your take on that?
I think that last year's Indiana team was an anomaly, and that if people are going to start creating their scheduling strategy around what they did last year, they're going to play themselves. You know who else does it? Penn State.
They did do it this year. Yeah.
And guess what?
Did not help.
If Penn State loses to Ohio State and Indiana ends up as a 3-loss team this year, they might not get in because they have no quality wins. So if you want to play that game, you can go for it. But by playing that game, you have to hope that there aren't any 2-loss teams in the SEC that you're being compared to. And you better hope that you actually go 11-1, because it's really hard to go 11-1 even against a perceived easy schedule. If you deprive yourself of those types of wins, you're hurting yourself in the long run. Now, you might lose, but it gives you an extra out if you do by doing it. So
I think even if it's a respectable game, you get a lot more panache about
yeah, I mean, and again, I don't know if Indiana playing Virginia is going to be the make or break of whether they get in. Actually, I don't think that it is at all, because no one cares. But listen, Virginia's pretty good this year. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. Virginia beat Florida State, and I think they're 5-1 right now. Yeah. So, if they would have played Virginia and beaten Virginia, and Virginia ends up at 10-2 or 9-3, that's a quality win, and that helps you on your resume. I think that this idea of skirting the hard games gets you a better record. Listen, if Indiana would have gone 10-2 last year against their schedule, or Alabama would have gone 10-2 and not lost to Oklahoma, they would not have gotten in.
Nope. That's what kills me.
They got lucky last year.
Yes, they got lucky, and then they went and did it. They're doing it more, and they're doubling down on this strategy.
But there's going to become a time and place where teams who do this face a debate at the end of the year, because there's one thing that people keep losing sight of, and it drove me crazy this entire offseason hearing about SEC canceling their games. It's like, all right, dude. Indiana played the 2 teams last year that were in the championship game the year before, and they both wound up stinking. So they didn't get that. They had no quality wins, and the only team that they played that was really good, they got their doors blown off. Mm-hmm. For that to happen, you have to thread the needle pretty good. The schedule has to happen that way, and it's going to be harder to do that. And then also you have to hope that nobody else in the country has a resume comparable to yours. And they got lucky last year that 2 SEC teams lost games to bad teams. They got lucky that Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, and they got really lucky that Alabama lost to Oklahoma last year, because if those 2 games didn't happen, Indiana would not have been in. And that's the thing that everybody loses sight of. The number one thing that the College Football Playoff Committee values is quality wins. You can do the strength of schedule bullshit and all the other things that they consider, but the thing that will get you in is if you beat good teams, which is why Oklahoma this year is a team that I believe could lose 3 times and still get in. Because at the end of the year, mark my words, come back to this episode in November. If a team has 3 losses but beat 3 playoff teams, they are going to get into the playoff, because quality wins means more than perfect schedule. And you might think that the illusion of what Indiana did last year means that schedule is the only thing that matters. But if you do, you don't understand the way that the playoff committee deliberates. So to me, all that other stuff of we're going to cancel all these games and things, Like Alabama's athletic director, I think, even came out and said, we're not going to play. Okay, go ahead. But, one day you might need that quality win and you're not going to have it. So I agree with you. I think that skirting the schedule is stupid. And if I were a Penn State fan, I would have liked to have a really good game in the non-conference earlier on. And maybe it would have prepared me enough to get over the hump against Oregon, or maybe it would have prepared me enough to not lay an egg at UCLA. I don't know. I don't think there's anything to gain by skirting tough games. And I think it sucks for the consumer because we want to be entertained.
It does suck for the consumer, yet I hear so many, like I heard Ohio State fans sticking up for Cignetti just because he framed it the way he framed it. Like, I just followed the SEC blueprint, and now I got Ohio State fans in my mentions saying, like, well, good for him. And it's like, wait a minute, Ohio State doesn't skirt a big game in the out of conference, and you're rooting for this guy to do it. We got to play against him.
Here's the thing that I have to recognize, and that you need to recognize, and I struggle with this, is that when in fanhood, people don't consume, it's the same thing as politics, man. If you are a Republican or a Democrat, everything that your candidate says, it doesn't matter who you go for, you're for, and everything that the other person says you don't like. And you form your opinion based on what's most advantageous for your own viewpoint. So even though, like for instance, I got into some hot water earlier in the week, or 2 weeks ago, when I said that it's not a lock for Notre Dame to get into the playoff if they finish 10-2. Notre Dame fans were very upset with me for saying that. I think that Notre Dame has a very good chance of getting in if they're 10-2, but it's not a lock. And then I had all these Notre Dame fans weaving these stories of like, well, if they do at the end of the year, their 2 losses will be against top 5 teams and they'll win 10 in a row and they'll be hot. And I wanted to scream and just say, listen, if Notre Dame were 10-2 with quality wins and they were being faced up against what you just described, you would totally be arguing against what you're arguing for right now. So like, everybody's fanhood opinions are formed on what is best for Ohio State. Curt Cignetti said something that was interesting that made the SEC look a little worse. That's good for Ohio State. I agree with it. There's no thought process of like, what's the unbiased actual take of what this should mean? It's always through the lens of what makes my favorite thing look the best. And there's no rationality behind that. And I try my best to have rational conversations, not with Ohio State fans, with all types of fans, because I'm doing my best on a daily basis on an hour-long podcast with a partner to talk about it in an unbiased and reasonable way. And there's nothing reasonable about being a fan.
I'm biased to the college football fan experience in general. That's kind of my bias. Like, I want what's best for us, the fan of all schools, of the consumer. Ari, obviously been following you for a long time. Always love your perspective on things. I think you bring something a little bit different than anybody else who covers the sport. And hey, like I said, you know what that thing is?
You know what that thing is? I don't give a shit if I offend people. I just want to do my best to tell what I perceive to be as the truth. And I know Doug and Bill do. Like, we're not here to tell you everything is great. And there are a lot of places that you can get that sort of thing. But my personality has always been, when you read my stuff, you might agree and you might not agree, but I need you to know that I'm doing my best to tell you what's real. Because there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of framing and stats, and everything in college football is morphed through a lens that makes things look most advantageous for your favorite team. When you read me, hopefully, or when you listen to me, you're going to get what I perceive to be as the real story, whether it's comforting or whether it's positive. That's what my goal is. So I appreciate you allowing me to come on and kind of spew that a little bit. But like, I just want to be steadfastly authentic, good and bad, as it pertains to your favorite team.
Absolutely. You do a great job, man. I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on, and tell Bill and Doug I said hi.
Will do. Have a good one.
Yep.